happy to see the house so filled. Before we start, I kindly request all to mute your mics and turn off your cameras. In case of any queries, please feel free to use the chat box. Research is seeing what everybody else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought. With the ideology in mind, the IEEE Education Society Kerala Chapter, in collaboration with the Hyderabad Chapter, welcomes you all to the first session of the tri-webinar series on various aspects of research. Today, we are so happy to kickstart the series with the very first webinar on the topic, How to Select Your Research Topic, Supervisor and Fixing the Timelines. To handle the session, we have Dr. Manoj PS, Chair of IEEE EMB Society Kerala Chapter. He is also a professor at the Department of Avionics in the Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology. To welcome the honored speaker and other delegates, I invite Mr. Varughese, Chair of IEEE Education Society Kerala Chapter. Over to you, sir.
Respected Speaker of the Day, Dr. Manoj, our Founder Chair, Professor Kasim, sir, and our senior members, advisors, Dr. Kesavaswamy, and coordinator of the event, Dr. Ravindranath, sir, Secretary Hyderabad Section, Sai Kumar, and all attendees. Today's webinar, which is arranged by Education Society Kerala Chapter in association with Hyderabad Section, as it is already told. Education Society is a community of professionals dedicated to ensure high-quality education in science and engineering. And at the heart of Education Society is a passion for education. And it provides professional development opportunities for academic and industry professionals. Among the activities planned by IEEE Kerala Education Society, which is a very new society chapter, we are happy and honored to have the present topic, research, selection, pursuing quality research, and patenting the research. Thanks to Dr. Ravindranath for arranging and coordinating the same. From the industry perspective, research and development is a continuous process for sustaining growth. From academy, depending on need from industry, same is taken up. Academy point of view, teachers passionate in research take up and get qualified for PhD. As a nation of 130 crore people, we need more PhDs, the same time quality PhDs with innovative solutions and products to address pain problems in society, present or future, benefiting society at large with adequate return to the society on investing for the same. We know the present world of technology driven is the outcome of continuous research and development world across. India needs more research and more PhDs. I think the present number of 25,000 per annum should get tripled in the next few years if we have to be in par with developed countries. Let us be self-sustained in technology, product development, rather than depending on importing. Let us concentrate according to the local requirements in research and development and innovating products and solutions. Let me come to my duty today. It is welcoming the guests. As you know, we have a distinguished professor, Dr. Manoj BS, Department of Avionics at Indian Institute of Science, Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology, and he is the chair of IEEE EMB, so he is a part and parcel of IEEE only. And we welcome you, sir, on behalf of IEEE Education Society.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I welcome the Hyderabad section EC members. Mr. Sai Kumar is here. Welcome Sai Kumar and EC members and other members of Hyderabad section. Special welcome to all the attendees to this section. I'm sure you will get benefited really. Please try to attend the other two webinars also. And I do welcome our senior members and all other members, especially Dr. Kesavaswamy, Dr. Ravindranath sir, and all EC members. And let me conclude wishing you a very, very fruitful 1 hour ahead. Thank you.
So shall I share my screen?
Sir,
Hello.
thank you, Varughese sir, for the welcome note. Next, I invite Dr. K.C. Ravindranath, Research Activities Chair of IEEE Education Society Kerala Chapter, to introduce the respected speaker for this session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Professor Manoj BS has completed his PhD from IIT Madras in 2004, and he was also trained in subsequently at University of California, San Diego, California, and he's a postdoctoral researcher from 2005 to 2008. Subsequently, he worked as a research scientist and lecturer in till 2017, and in 2017 he joined as associate professor at Department of Avionics, Institute of Space Science and Technology, Trivandrum. He became a full professor in 2017 and served as head of the Department of Avionics during 2016 to 2019. He already received several awards and honors, including IEEE Outstanding Researcher Award in 2020 from IEEE Kerala section, Teaching Innovator in 2016 from MHRD, Government of India, for the Outstanding Leadership Award by IIT CNNC in 2015, and IBM Outstanding PhD Thesis Award in 2004, to name a few. He proposed the MHRD award-winning multi-track modular technologies as innovative method for research-oriented teaching, which is now being heavily lauded by several people in the academia, and autonomous institutions and universities are using this material as the basic part to enhance their research activity. He has published more than 150 international publications, including journals and in conference proceedings. He has authored and books, and his the recent work which I mentioned is available in Amazon. Those who are interested in research activities, either academic research, part of their industrial activities, can refer that book. He something more to add. He is an active of IEEE and currently serving as the chair of IEEE EMBS of IEEE Kerala section. So once again, I formally welcome and request Professor Manoj to take over. Make it very memorable. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ravindranath, for very warm words about me. And thanks to Kasim sir and others at IEEE EdSoc Kerala Chapter for inviting me for delivering a series of lectures on this topic. Thanks to all those who listen to this topic. So, as you may have already known, this is actually a series of 3 lectures that I'm going to give, and maybe followed by many others by other speakers at EdSoc Kerala Chapter. And in this topic, we'll be discussing about research guide and guide as well as topic selection. Okay, so I did not include the timeline in this talk because earlier I had included, but after having seen the flyers, I had not given much priority for that. And more importantly, the timeline is very critical if you do PhD research in US or other foreign countries compared to doing that in India. But we can discuss that topic in another talk. So this is the first talk in this series. We'll be discussing about research topic selection as well as guide selection, and I am focusing only on the PhD related research particularly the engineering PhD, and there might be some differences for the PhD in sciences. Okay, there are various aspects which might be different in sciences. Literature survey itself may be different. The importance of the publications will be different, and many other differences may exist. But you can make many things from this that will be useful for other areas in some aspects of science, as well as for degrees like MPhil or masters. So, in fact, there were a couple of people who suggested some of the topics. One of the audience, I think he's here. I just noticed his name. He was suggesting topics like this, but I have covered the approach supervisor, and I also had covered many of the challenges and solutions. But the publishing papers that we had already covered in another recent event at IEEE Kerala section, so I did not cover in this particular talk. But if necessary, we can do this as a separate talk at a different presentation in this. So, but I cover a request from another audience member that is on the literature survey. So let's begin with the topic of research topic selection. Okay, so how to choose a research topic and what you should be looking at and what way you can be a relevant researcher. So I found many of the cases that I have observed in my students as well as other peers as well as my own research. There are a few points that we should look at when you choose a research topic. One is relevance and timeliness. Second thing is future growth prospects. And third is your technical strength. Fourth is available guidance, and fifth, your passion. So in your available guidance, there is also another aspect that is coming about funding possibility that is also included. It's actually captured within this available guidance. So when you look at the first point, that is relevance and timeliness, you should try to choose a research area that is very relevant for today. Okay, because if you are not doing what is relevant and important for today, it will be very, very hard. Even though there are a lot of engineering areas which are very important, like the steam engine or IC engines, which were very, very popular at some point of time, but really though not really important today. So if you are choosing an area that is not relevant, it will not be easy to survive. It will not be easy to get a job based on that, and so on. So if you want to look at the engines, instead of looking at the past areas, you should look at the new areas where multi-fuel engines or electric vehicle engines or other engines that are very relevant for today, and you will be your area will be hot cake, and you will be chosen by industry as well as academy very, very fast. Even in case of an example networking research area, if you choose like 2G, 3G or 4G cellular networks, they were very, very hot topics in the past. Like when we were doing PhD, like 2G was the most researched or active area at that time. But now, if you are looking at 2G, I think you will not be considered as an active researcher anymore. So that way, what is relevant for today should be chosen. Okay. Now, the area that is well developed may not offer you possibilities. The area that is currently active and emerging, which will give a lot more choices. So, for example, even if you now venture, you're starting your research in 5G area, that may not offer you as much importance as when you do research in 6G, because 5G is already in the deployment stage. Standardization is fairly done, and you may not find there will be a lot of open research area relevant for 5G, except the 5G integration with satellite, 5G integration with other network segments and so on. In comparison, if you start your research in early research stage areas like 6G, that will give very, very significant opportunity. So this picture is actually from one of the research papers. So this shows where the original 5G capability is anticipated and delivered by today networks in terms of end-to-end latency or peak spectral efficiency or peak data rate. The maximum data rate that was anticipated was 20 Gbps in 5G. Whereas in 6G, this is actually in terabits per second capacity. So you can see this is where your research that is actually going to play a role. Okay, so I'm showing one or two areas in relevant to communication, networking, computer science, and so on. But when it comes to your area, there will be similar rapidly growing or emerging areas which are actually very, very important for your research activity. So even if you look at the development of some of the past areas, in the last 10-15 years, the wireless sensor networks was one of the very, very active areas. There were a large number of papers published, books appeared in the market, and testbeds available and devices developed. But today that is actually emerged and consumed by a larger area called Internet of Things. Even ad hoc networks as an area which was very, very hot topic 10 years back, which is now slowly emerging into the area called rapid developing area called DrawNet. So P2P, many of the research directions in P2P is now becoming blockchain. So if you venture into pure P2P, your area may not be, your research may not be visible or appreciated or accepted, or even job prospect will be affected compared to your time and research investment in blockchain related areas. So that is one thing. What is relevant for today, you have to choose for your research. So this this talk series is aiming at research scholars, students, and others who are about to take up research. Even faculty members who are going to be join for a PhD program can actually use it, but it's actually not meant for established researchers who have already done or who are going to guide new students. Now, second aspect that you should look at in the research area is what is the future growth prospects. So an area may be very hot today, but it may not be very significant growth in the future. So you have to look at what is the future growth possibility. And as you say, there's a hype cycle for every research area. Now, if your research area is at the top of the high or the peak of the hype cycle, then possibly it is actually on the decline and you may not benefit from that. For example, you must have seen this hype cycle for emerging technologies by companies like Gartner. This is actually from Gartner. That they actually take timeline versus the expectations, and technologies are at various stages of this hype cycle. So usually when the technology is at the peak of this, then you start your research, and by the time you end your research, you will not find this technology very relevant. So that way, when you find this kind of an area or this kind of a hype chart or this kind of interest chart, that actually tells you if you choose an area or research area from this segment or this particular region of the hype, then there is certain amount of time for which the research activities will be highly respected and opportunities will be really good, and that will be very good. So for example, quantum computing now emerging as quantum machine learning, which in the future years can become very, very relevant. So many such areas, if you find the early stage of the hype cycle of that particular domain, you will find that the future possibilities for that will be very, very strong in fact, I have seen this in several of the communication and networking areas. When we found once in 2000s, we can say optical fiber networks were very, very hot topics. People were saying that optical fiber networks were significantly replacing the backbone networks across the world. But what happened was there were so many periods of major growth, and then there's a long period of minor improvements. So we can see there is a growth here, and then there is another, then there's a new technology coming, and then there is another growth. So usually researchers will not find a lot of opportunities when in this particular time periods, and there will be a lot of hype, a lot of industry investment, a lot of opportunities for these periods. And in some of these areas, there is not many opportunities. Even you can find the number of journals working in that area may be much smaller compared to other areas. Even for another example is the larger area of wireless networks. So we can see that every 10 years there is a radical change in the technology. Okay, as you have seen in the cellular network, you have seen many technologies have emerged, and if you see the wireless LAN or local area networks, you can see a lot of technology changes have happened. For every one of these technology changes, you get a lot of opportunity to research. So similarly, you can see the evolution of the internet, evolution of computing architectures, evolution of sensors and IoT and related areas. So you can find rapidly changing innovations and that changes appear very significantly over the decades. So such areas are actually giving opportunities for a very, very large number of researchers, because the innovation potential is very high. Now, you must have heard this report from various industry, market agencies, like IoT is an area that is going to, occupy about 60% of engineers from various disciplines. So this disciplines will say from electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, even civil engineering, then ECE and CSE area. So this area is because this IoT area is going to explode in a very significant way in various areas like smart homes, smart cities, and industrial IoT and various other areas. So this is an area that is not going to be just a computer scientist opportunities or just a EC scientist opportunity. This is actually going to be opportunities from civil, mechanical to all other areas. So that is actually going to be very, very significant development in the future, if you consider the future prospects. So you need to look at what is relevant today. You also need to look at what is going to be relevant for the next probably 1 decade or so. So then another aspect that you need to look at is your technical strength. Okay, this is very, very important. I have seen several students who took up research had faced problems even if they make an attempt. So in choosing an area, you have to have your technical strength is a very, very important capability, because even if you are there are research directions that can be considered empirically relevant or empirically conducted or experimental, analytical, theoretical or computational research. Now if you are good in, say for example, mathematics, you can actually you can be a very good researcher in theoretical and analytical research. But you need not be always, research is always valid and important no matter what approach you take, whether you are an empirical researcher or an analytical or a computational researcher. It's still valid in all directions, but your technical capability, your natural skills in that area will be very, very important for developing. For example, if you are good in engineering areas, then experimental or empirical research is very, very useful. If you have a natural talent in programming, then I think computational research approach will be very good for you. So that actually is going to give you a lot more capability or a lot more easiness in carrying out the research strength. Another aspect that you should choose for the guiding or guidance or for the topic, for the selection of the topic, is availability of a guide. So a guide is very, very important for carrying out good quality research. And it's not easy that you will have a guide in any area that you would wish to do. Okay, you may not get a guide, or a guide may not be available in that area. So if you prefer to do research in some area like computer networks, you should have an expert guide in that area. Okay, if you choose a guide who is an expert in another area, then he may also be learning along with you in the computer networks area, and you will not actually make sense. So if there are multiple areas suitable for you, choose the one for which a better guide available. So that is actually very, very important. When you approach a department, when you approach an institute for PhD, then you should look at the areas available in terms of the guides, and then see what area you have a relevance today and what area you have a future tomorrow, and you can choose one for which a guide is available too. So that way you will be able to make a very good choice for the research area. So interaction with the mentors or guides will be very, very helpful. So by the time when you approach first time, you don't have to say that you are going to do research in the area. You are exploring the research in particular areas, including that one. So you will be able to get feedback from the guides availability, whether the guide is willing to take students that semester or that year or not. So that is very, very important to choose an area where a guidance is available. And one of the very important matters for choosing your research topic is your passion. Okay, so whether you really have interest in that area. Okay, you may have a very attractive area in terms of quantum computing or quantum machine learning, or you may have a very hot area in terms of millimeter wave technology, or maybe electric vehicles development and so on. But if you do not have a natural interest or passion, you may not make a significant progress in that particular area. So that way you should like the area and start doing that. Okay, given everything else is available, so it will be very hard to make an impact if the researcher is not passionate about the research, even if everything else is actually remember. So this is where it's very important that you have to have some idea about what kind of a scientific legacy that you want to leave behind after your scientific career, or why should people remember you, or what kind of innovation you would want to develop during the research career. And that area you have, I'm sure you must have already developed this passion, this interest, this underlying direction, but you may not have realized what it is. So that is actually very, very important to understand. What is it that you like? What is it that you feel happy when you think about among all the areas that you do? And that area you will have a very, very natural interest. You might be very, very good to do that. So it is very important to do an assessment of yourself in your preferred areas and subjects, because every area you can make an impact if you have real passion in that. Okay, so that's very, very important. So if you generally find an area, you look at what is the relevance for today, what is the future emerging possibilities, where there is a guide available or not, and whether you have real passion in working that area. If all the three things are there, but you don't have a real passion, then there is no point in working in that area. So you will end up dropping that research in between. So that way you identify an area, and now you need to find a research problem in that area. Okay, if you say computer networks, or if you say communication systems, or power electronics, or even biomedical engineering, you may not be able to just like that start unless you find an open research problem. So how do you find an open research problem? Some of the strategies that can be followed is, one is to read through literature review papers or literature survey papers. Okay, so these are actually survey papers that will be surveying large number of maybe 20 to 100 research papers will be surveyed, and information will be organized, classified, and presented for researchers like you to easily understand what is the landscape of existing research papers in that area. So you will be able to take benefit of the effort put in by the authors of those survey papers. So you save a lot of time. So you will look at the open research issues and problems discussed in such survey papers. That will give you a fairly good idea about what kind of research that you will be able to carry out. So even you can look into the journals or conference papers where some of the advantages and disadvantages of the papers, the ideas discussed in the paper will be discussed in the paper, discussed in some sections of the paper, or you can also look at conclusions and future work section. So let me just show one or two examples here. So this is one of the papers that appeared in IEEE Internet of Things journal last year. And this is the last section where the conclusion of the paper was written, and a significant part of the conclusion is actually based on what was actually studied and observed in the paper. This is about a blockchain architecture. It's called sliding window blockchain architecture. And but if you can see, a few points of important open research problems were given here. So if you look at future work, it can be carried out to analyze the impact of a variable size sliding window. New consensus algorithms can be developed to suit IoT environment. That's the second problem. So there are like three problems, three new directions given in this particular paper at the end of the paper as part of the conclusions or future work section. So a researcher can, somebody who is reviewing the papers will be able to read and understand the paper and look at what are the future possibilities in this paper. So another paper that is actually published in last year, IEEE Transactions on Network and Service Management. This is about a medium-term software disruption tolerant software-defined network. So again, this is the conclusion section. The major part of the conclusion is actually about what was discussed in the paper. But if you can look at, there are some of the new directions are discussed. So we can say the new directions are mentioned. A couple of new problems are actually mentioned here. So that way, if you are a researcher, you have to make, if you're a researcher, if you're an author, if you're a faculty member, make sure there is a conclusions and future work section, or where you will be discussing about also, so that other researchers will be tempted to follow your paper. So this is very important, that people will be looking at this section, so your paper will be visible to others. So if you are a new researcher and you want to understand where is a research landscape, or where are the open problems, what area you can work on, then you look into this section called conclusions and future work, where you will be able to understand future work possibilities. Okay, so this is one way to identify for the papers that you read. And so another way that I commonly understand, as well as use, or I understand where the major innovation is happening, or where my students can actually look into directions, is actually look into very top class conferences. Very top class conferences is actually varying across areas. This is actually some of the conferences in our area, like IEEE Infocom, ASEAN SICOM, ASEAN Mobicom, Globcom, Secon, Mobisys, and so on. But in your area, in power electronics, it may be different. It may be different in transmission systems. It may be different in communication systems, and so on. So if you look at these top class conferences, conferences are much faster in terms of publication cycle compared to journals, and you will find the most recent directions. And what I do typically to some of my best students is to read through the best paper award winning papers, and these award winning papers may have significant novelty element. That's why they have been recognized. And I will ask students to identify why they have won the award, and what are the future work possibilities in this area. So it's a very secret strategy that I follow to make sure my students are actually following the cutting edge directions to do that, and that gives them a good perspective compared to reading literature survey papers. So literature survey papers may appear 1 year or 2 year later after publishing these cutting edge papers. So that way, a new researcher will be able to find out impactful areas from the literature survey. So now, let me just these are some of the just I googled for the current year 2021 what best papers awards were given in IEEE Infocom, and what novelty they have brought out in in their papers. So you can see, if you are interested, you can see, read through these papers and see these are like a class apart compared to other accepted papers. So if you want to check out this conference is an example conference where the acceptance rate is typically something like 10% to 20%. Okay, this is the acceptance rate. You will be surprised where in some years it can be 10% acceptance rate too. So that way, it's very, very highly competitive, and there are such conferences organized by IEEE and ASEAN where you will be able to identify very, very good quality papers. Now, how do you do a literature survey? If you are actually reading through and finding your own open problems, there are a few things that I want to suggest you. One, search in top quality digital libraries. Okay, what is a top quality digital library? What is a typical Google activity, Google search activity? So when you look at IEEE Explore, ASM Digital Library, Elsevier or Springer, you will be getting a kind of papers that will be much better in quality compared to what you get a typical Google search. Okay, so I do not want to name some of the places which may not be of very good quality. It's not a good forum to do that. So you want to search in relevant journals in your area once you have chosen the area. So you want to choose relevant conference proceedings. Conference proceedings are also having wide variety in terms of quality. So it takes years to understand which conference is actually relevant. And that is where an advisor is going to be very relevant, very useful for you, because advisor may have a clarity on which is a good conference, which is not a good conference. And you can also read through existing literature surveys and classify the papers before finalizing the survey. And you can look at this classification as well as identification of the pros and cons of each paper will get you a large volume of open research problems. So this is actually going to set your research direction. By the time, if you have done your own research survey, you would have definitely got a significant volume of knowledge about this, what I call as existing landscape of research papers. Now, another way to do that is, as I mentioned earlier, Gartner's report, like marketing agencies report on what is the technical area which is actually very, very hot and very relevant. This is a large picture. You may not be able to see that clearly, but it gives you a perspective of which is a very, very hot technology, at various stages of deployment to pilots deployment areas or in planning stage too. So this will give you the area perspective, but once you have found the area, you will have to find out open research problems. For that, a literature review is very, very important. Now, many times, students will have a difficulty. I have seen that among my own students too, how to make a literature survey and how to read the papers for a literature survey. So if you want to do this, as you meant, there are two stages of reading that you have to do. First, you have collected, say for example, collected about 100 papers. Okay, so collected maybe more than 100 papers. So each paper is a research or is an effort of how many years? 1 to 2 years of the authors. Okay, authors may have spent about 1 or 2 years in coming out with the paper, so you cannot easily read this. So what you have to read is, you collect the paper, read a swift reading of one abstract. Okay, and second, conclusion. So you shortlist after reading these two into a subset. Maybe like you get 60 papers out of this. Okay, and you get a short list of relevant papers for your particular area. And second time, what you have to read is, one, abstract you have already read, and two, conclusion you have already read, and you read the topic sentences of each paragraph in that topic sentences. So if the author has written fairly well, then this is actually going to give you a little bit deeper about what the paper is, and you are actually going to get a further shortlist of maybe like 30 papers in that. So these papers are the papers that you have to sit and read in detail. So in the third level of reading, read the entire paper. Okay, and prepare classification so that you understand how they are categorized or how they can be categorized, and identify the future work possibilities. So this kind of a survey is actually going to be very effective. So if you start reading papers full and first stage itself, you will not complete this in like a couple of months time. So that way, the filtered multiple stages of reading can be very, very useful in preparing a literature survey. So let me just first point, the choosing the research topic. Let me summarize that relevance and timeliness is very important. Future growth prospects are very important. And your technical strength in that kind of research that you are going to do, that's very important. Guidance availability is very important. And your passion to do research is very important in identifying a topic. And then you do what is it called, literature review, and identifying the open problems in that area. Now comes the second problem that we are going to discuss, choosing a guide or advisor. Because this is a very, very important task, because the guide is a person who is going to make a significant contribution in your success in the PhD. Okay, I find there are multiple points that you should consider before choosing a guide. One is the technical knowledge, Second is the research output or research impact of the guide using certain metrics. Third is a mentoring ability of the guide. Not every guide can have the good ability to mentor. They can look at the past history of this guidance, opinion from current students or on the mentoring style of the guide, or even you can also get information about how respectful he is to the students, and then the guides ethics as well as policies. Then usually some people do based on the influencer, but we will also discuss that aspect. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the technical knowledge of a guide is very, very important aspect. As I mentioned earlier, identifying a conference or identifying a journal's value or even they determine the quality of a paper, guide's technical knowledge is very important. So this is one of the most important aspect of a desired guide. And in fact, he may be good in one area. Okay, if you good computer networks, power electronics, or even if you say communication systems, biomedical engineering, a guide good here may be bad here because he may not be very good in power electronics. A guide good here may be very poor here. So that way he is only good on this particular area, and you should not choose a topic in other area, ask him to guide. So this is very, very important to choose the right guide in the right area. So his technical knowledge in this particular area may be very good, 5 stars, and maybe the same person maybe like in another area maybe only 3 stars. Okay, he is not the best possible person in that area. So that is very, very important. So there is no good person per se. A person may be good in a particular area, but may not be so in another area. So this is very, very important to get a knowledgeable person to be your guide. So you can look at whether he is knowledgeable or not by looking at the courses taught by the guide, lectures delivered by the guide, publications made by the guide, or books written, or even when he interacts with you, when you approach for a guidance, you will be able to make measurements on whether he is actually good, in the technical skills or not. So that's very, very important to interact with the guide and ask him questions, the feasibility of doing research in the area, what areas are actually possible, whether he is going to guide you or not. And during all these interactions, you will be able to make certain judgment about what area he is actually possibly available to guide. And in fact, I also look at a very important direction that the professional affiliation of a guide. So let's look at the particular case. There is one example guide, guide 1 and guide 2. So guide 1 is actually some professional agency. So professional agency 1. Okay, I do not name anything for here, but the guide 2 is actually very active in say IEEE or ASEAN or optical or ASEAN Optical Society of OSA and so on. So naturally, you will find that this guide 2 is very active in high profile professional agencies, professional organizations. So he may be better aware of the current trends in the technology, where the technology is progressing, what is the latest and where is it going to be, and so on, compared to this particular guide. And you can definitely find this guide is actually more relevant or more useful for your research. So this is very, very important aspect, because you want to get a guide who is technically knowledgeable, technically updated and current, and you will be able to get better help from him. The second aspect, the research output or the impact the guide is actually able to make. So I would recommend you choose a guide who has a very good research output. So this is very important to find out the track record of the guide. And one of the ways that you can find is to look at the metrics or research publication track, as well as looking at how many papers he published in the last 3 to 5 years. And he may be very good guide, much older in time, but he may not be very active in the current research areas. So if you look at the research publication record of a guide, you will be able to identify who is actually very active at this point, who will be able to help you better in the recent trends or research technology areas. So many people look at the metrics like the H index to identify what is the H index of the guide. So which is one of the ways how you can actually measure the research impact of a particular Grade. So as I mentioned earlier, so if you say grade 1, again here grade 2, there are technically available in the same area, and grade 1 has only an H index of 5, which means he has published in his career about 5 papers with 5 citations each, whereas grade 2 has like H index of 25. That means he has published a lot more papers, so he is more experienced in the research. His impact is much more because he has a lot more citations with every one of his paper. So that way you may find that except if other matters are research, other matters are similar, then grade 2 may be a better grade for the current area because of the proven metrics that he has. Okay. Now, another very important thing is where the grade is publishing, the quality of the gate's publications. So you may have again the situation is here. You have grade 1 and grade 2 here. Grade 1 has published 150 papers. Imagine I'm just taking the number for a senior professor or whatever, 150 papers. But there is all these are actually conference papers and mostly national level conference papers. Whereas grade 2, who has again 150 papers total, but he has like 30 IEEE transactions. So this tells a big story about the capability that he has, because IEEE transactions are one of the highest level technical papers, highest quality technical papers in the area where you are working, like electrical engineering, computer science, communication systems, biomedical engineering, and all these areas. The highest level journals are actually IEEE transactions. It's very, very hard to get a paper published. You cannot imagine poor paper getting in these papers. So if you consider, despite other factors remaining, but this professor or this guide is having several IEEE transactions, and that must be a very good guide. Without that, he cannot, without being very good, he cannot publish that. So that is where you also want to target publishing in very good places. For that, you need to have a very good guide who will be typically publishing in a very good place too. Number of publications, many of the publications, like very high quality journals, citations of the guide in terms of number of papers, H index of the guide, I-10 index of the guide, another metric where the number of papers with the 10 citations published by the paper, or impact of the guide in other forms, like how many patents the guide has, or how many technologies developed by the guide is adopted by the industries, or how many standards were contributed by the guide. IEEE standards are open standards which are contributed by many of the IEEE members. So if somebody is actually contributing to several standards, his level of knowledge, expertise, as well as impact is much better. So that kind of a guide will be very, very good for you. So that way you will be able to do a little bit of research about the research output of your potential guide. You will be able to do a much better decision on guide selection. Now, another very important aspect that I find it very, very relevant is to observe what is the student mentoring ability of a guide. Okay, again, you may have many guides. You are all very good in research and technology, but when you are going as a student or research scholar, it's very important to choose a guide who mentors the students very well. So, there are gates. I have seen that the gates are asking students to do, pick up a coffee, snacks, clean the vessel, sweeping his room, and so on. These were all accepted practice at one point of time in our past or ancient times. But I do not personally find these are all very good practices, and a research guide should not ask a student to do these things. And because our objective is to have a technical mentorship and technical guidance, not guidance on other aspects of life. At least for the PhD, that is how it should be. So that way, if you have a guide who is actually asking students to do such menial jobs, I would recommend you prefer less to join such a guide. And you have to check how your potential guide behaves with the senior students already existing there or graduated in the past. If the guide is actually doing something like throwing a document, throwing a thesis and beating him up, that is not a good guide that you should not choose to join there. So an abusive guide will not be a good choice, and many students have suffered by the behavior like an abusive kind when they join for PhD under them. So guide should be approachable. So you need to check whether the guide is approachable. It's not that if you fear the guide significantly, then it will not be very, very good for your research. And very decent guides, I have seen excellent guides who are all approachable for the students. So you should be able to judge whether your guide is an approachable, or judge them for such factors with the interactions that you have with him, or with the interactions that you have with his students. So you also have to look at the past history of the guidance of the student, okay, of the guide. Okay, like for example, past guidance history is a very important data as a student you should collect and decide before joining him. Okay, how many students were guided by your guide? Okay, and your potential guide. Okay, and where are those students now? If they are working in good places, if they are in good places, then you too can expect something similar, and you will also be very, very good in getting a job or in getting a placement and so on. Okay, so a guide whose students have done very well is a better preferred guide compared to others. Okay, in fact, today it is measured by many foreign universities that guides capability or impact is by the success of their students. Okay, what is the impact made by the students of the guide? Have they done well in their research job or academia job or industry job? If they have done well, the guide is probably a good person. Okay, the guide's ability is often measured or estimated through their students' success only. Okay, there is I have seen many IEEE recognitions at a IEEE headquarters level is based on the student success only. Okay, you may have a guide and guide may have like 500 students, and these 500 students are all jobless. Doesn't matter whether you have 500 students or more, but since they are all jobless, you have no impact made through your work. So if you have a guide 2 have only 150 students graduated, but they are all leaders in their respective areas, then this student is a student, this guide is a guide a student should prefer. Okay, so this is very, very important. IEEE like agencies or organizations give significant impact to such people who develop their students to become technically impactful persons. And you should also look at the history of your guides past guidance or their past students to do that. So as I mentioned earlier, if you visit a department from for the purpose of identifying a guide, if you are visiting an institute, this is very, very important that you look at how the mentoring style of a guide. Okay, this is, I would say, you should spend a good amount of time on the mentoring style, and you should visit the current students of the guide or the past students to know about the research areas, research topics, mentoring style, and how many meetings a week or month the guide will have with the student, what is the frequency of meetings, and how the guide helps them in research. Different guides help at different levels. Okay, some students sit with hands-on solutions. Some guides help them once in a while. Some guides do not help them at all. Okay, why do you want to get into trouble with such guides? Or more importantly, whether the guide treat the students well. Okay, whether the guide is responding to the mistake of the students in a very harsh way. Okay, if you make a mistake and the guide reacts you in a very, very harsh way, then that will actually give you very, very negative intimation that you will fear in the future to make mistakes. So that is actually not good. You should learn from the mistakes and improvise, and you need to have a guide who will mildly treat you when you make mistakes. And even whether it's very harsh at mistakes or not. So in fact, I've seen many guides abuse their students in front of others too. So those are all not good practice, and you actually get a feel of how your potential target guide on these metrics, and then you should make a judgment by yourself. In fact, you should also be realizing the reality or the real truth from the comments, because one angry student may be very, very angry with a guide, but you should be able to see whether the student is at fault or a faculty is at fault before making your own decision. That's a very, very critical matter. So as I mentioned earlier, respect towards student is very important for a guide. If you are a guide, you actually consider this is a very, very important factor. If you are a student, you look for a guide who will actually be respectful to a student. The best guide I have seen and I have experienced also, they respect their students. They don't treat the students as slaves. Okay, they treat the students as junior colleagues because they handhold and work with the students' problems. And such students will not be afraid of making mistakes and learning from the mistakes, because this respect element is very important, because the advisor or a PhD guide has to help the student in research survey, problem identification, solution approaches, and validating the solution, writing the research papers, reviewing the papers, understanding, understanding the reviewer's comments. This is very important when reviewer is actually commenting on your paper. If you are not making, if you are not able to make a understanding of the subject comments, you will not be able to. You are not a good PhD output. Okay, so preparing the responses, presenting an idea, writing a dissertation, defending it, co-mentoring the students. So this last point I mentioned is something that only very good guides will allow their PhD students to do. I would recommend every PhD student should allow PhD students to co-mentor junior students. That way, the PhD students will get some extra level of technical capability. Yes, because soon after the PhD, they will join in a respectable position either as a faculty member or as a researcher, where they have to immediately take up subordinates. So that way, since the PhD student has to handhold you in almost every one of these aspects, you do not want a kind of boss. You want actually a very good guide who respectfully treat you in all these aspects. So then ethics of the guide. This is very important. Even though many people do not worry about it, these days, there are many institutions have faculty members who are blacklisted by IEEE like organizations. Okay, for their publication ethics or other kind of mistakes they have made. There's a large number of names appearing in this blacklist, even by IEEE and other organizations. So it's very, very important that if you choose a guide who has been in the blacklist of IEEE, you cannot publish any of the papers in IEEE like forums. So which means you have to fall back into lower quality publications, and you will actually be producing papers in low visibility platforms. So that's very, very important that you should look at whether the guide is standing well on the aspect of ethics, whether the guide is following the publication ethics, intellectual property ethics, or even behavior ethics, as well as financial ethics. So I've seen several cases recently in some of the top class institutions where complaints about behavior of guides, and even complaints about the some of the guides were accused of major financial corruptions. So all these things can actually tamper if you choose them as your guide, which means that your reputation also will be affected if you choose such people as guide. It's very, very important to choose a person who's ethically very good. And in some cases, students choose a guide based on the influence of the guide. In fact, for example, in many research scholars choose head of the department as a guide, dean research as a guide, director of the institute, even vice chancellor as a guide. In fact, there are pros and cons in choosing that kind of a decision of an influential person, because administratively he is very powerful. Your papers can actually move very fast. Your permissions for whatever travel, conference, and other things can happen. You can get scholarship extensions and so on. And you may even get respect from the students as well as staff from the institute too. So this I have seen many times. This is actually going to be an advantage. But I most often see that the disadvantage is actually dominating in such cases, because a research guide may not be available to guide you. Okay, the research guide is very busy person. He will not be able to read through the papers. He will not be able to sit with you to discuss a problem. He will not be able to actually guide you properly, because a research guide has to spend several hours of interactions every month to guide him all the points that I have mentioned here. So this is a very, very complex sequence of activity from the day you join till the day you graduate. So unless a guide is available to guide you with several hours of interaction, this cannot be accomplished. And a very busy guide, no matter how powerful he is, will not be available and will not be able to give you the technical support. So at the end of the day, you will graduate as a PhD with much less exposure, which is actually very bad in the longer term. In fact, a powerful guide might retire 2 years from the highest administrative office, and even before you're finishing the PhD, he might even retire, and you may not continue getting the advantage that you initially got. Okay, so that way, I would recommend that these disadvantages from that is actually more important. So you may not want to choose that position. But I have found alternatively, if it is not administrative positions in the local institute, but administrative or technical leadership positions like IEEE, I've seen several students who are doing very well when their advisors are actually in IEEE or ACM leadership, because these are technical organizations. Their leadership is not administratively powerful, but technically knowledgeable, and they will have better visibility and better exposure to the technical area. So that is actually going to be attractive. In fact, many students of such people are also working as IEEE volunteers and so on, because I have seen some of my colleagues who are very active in IEEE or ACM activities have found their students much better than other faculty members who are not active in that kind of forums. So that's because the gates are elevated people, knowledgeable people. So naturally that is going to reflect on the students' side too. So now it's very, very important that you have to actually sync your ideas well with your guide. In terms of a local saying, it's almost like a marriage. The relationship between you and your guide is more like a marriage. You have to be in very good terms with your guide in order to have a fruitful research outcome. Because as I mentioned earlier, the research here is a multidisciplinary skill. You need to have good reading skill, good writing skill, good skills on investigation, as well as creative design of your solutions. And you also should be able to listen, present, review, and do commenting too. So these multidisciplinary skills cannot be acquired if you are not in good terms with your guide. So this is very, very important to have a very good terms with your guide. And this way of evaluating the guide is very important to get a good terms with him. So that way, he need to help you in way. So let me just summarize the points I mentioned. So the topic selection, you should be looking at the relevant and the timely topics. You should look at the area that has future growth prospects. Your technical strength, particularly in the direction of the solution, is very important to make a very good impact. And your guidance is very important. So you should look at an area where you have an expert available to guide. And more important is the passion that you have in a particular area that is actually going to guide you. So for the guide selection, technical knowledge of the guide is very important. Research impact or output of the guide, the ability of the guide to do the mentoring in a respectable way. For that, you can get the history of guidance, opinion from current and past students on mentoring style, and evaluation on the respect towards students. And further to that, you need to look into the ethics as well as influence of the guide to choose a guide. So as I mentioned earlier, you need to interact with the guide and few people in the department, few students of the possible guides, and then you look at what will be you when you do research with him, where you will be able to be in the future when you do research with him. So what kind of treatment you are going to get, what kind of areas you are going to get if you work with him, and then you can actually choose a research guide in that. So let me stop here. If you have any questions, you can ask me now.
Sir, dear Manoj, please, I have two tricky questions. One
Yes,
is
please.
often people ask regarding publication, which is the mid-level or finally awarding just before awarding degrees based on their publications. Quite often students worry even before starting the problem or even before the investigation actually starts. Is it good to publish in predatory journals or where they ask for a payment? That is one question. Then the
Yeah.
second question is even more difficult. If you find a guide which is fairly old, but he is still very much in the academia, and he had held several positions in the senior administrative post also, like dean. But still, if they challenge you with a good problem, reasonably good problem, will you choose for a guy who is freshman in research guidance, like fresh faculty who have just joined an institute after several years of PDF and excellent work elsewhere, especially in
Yeah. Okay.
we often count people who work in foreign countries for their PDF or PhD as superior. So these
Yeah.
two questions, if you could kindly answer, my
Yeah.
trouble will be less. We have a lot
So
of questions coming up in the chat window.
yeah. Okay. Let me just
Thank you.
answer the first question. First question is actually predatory publication. So I would suggest you make every attempt not to publish in such places. Okay. The reason I'll tell you this, there is no peer review for such papers. There is no editorial board in many of the journals. Some of the editorial journals in such predatory publications are fake. Okay. Fake editorial boards are present there. In fact, the editorial board members do not know that they have been listed. And these predatory publications are just value of only PDF. If you place a PDF file online, okay, what is the value of that? There is no value, and in fact it may disappear too. In fact, there was a recent study that something like 3,000 of predatory journals stopped functioning. Were closed, which means there is nobody to give the money to publish, and the papers all disappeared, which means all those who have published there, whether it's fake papers or good papers, even if you have published a good paper there, that is now disappeared, and the journal itself is not there. So it's not a good practice to have a predatory publication. So this is why I want the gates to be very serious and research students not to attempt this. So your publication should be a very, very high quality publication. Okay, and you should aim at that, even if it takes an extra year of your PhD. So you should aim at that, and there is absolutely no value that you get by this predatory publication. So it kills actually. In fact, a recent study shows that India and China are the two countries heavily putting in papers in the predatory segment of publication. So it's very, very important that we should stop that practice. So your second question is about a young guide, okay, and versus senior guide. And senior guide has already got like a H index, maybe 330, and publication count citation something like 10,000 and so on. Whereas a young guide who doesn't have that, okay, who maybe H index is only 5, maybe he just started 1 year after PhD, and citation will be about 1,000 only. And in comparison to the metrics, the young guide may appear to be not as good as a senior guide. Okay, but I have found that this is where your judgment you have to use. This young guide may sometimes be very good compared to the senior guide, and you have to make your own observation, like what is his PhD publication. This is where the PhD publications are very important. You have to read through the PhD publications and see who is his guide, and what is the research promise. What is the research promise this young guide is actually offering? Okay. Now I have found some of my young faculty colleagues are extremely good. They attract students equally or better than the senior colleagues. Okay. So it is possible that this young guide, despite these lower metrics, he can be judged as a very, very good guide, and you can actually take him. One big value in taking a young guide compared to a senior guide is that the young guide will have lot more time, okay, lot more time for guiding you. This is very important. The first PhD student of every young faculty will get a lot more time than other subsequent PhD students, like second, third, and fourth. When you are becoming the 10th PhD students of a guide, your guide may not spend you a lot of time compared to the first student got. Okay, so that way. This is very important that a student who approaching this kind of a situation should make a very careful judgment about the promise of this young guide so that you can choose him, okay, with a great benefit in the future. Yeah, sir, other questions you may
Thank you, Manoj. You made it simply grand. There are several other questions, so
Yeah.
I mute myself
So
for the time being.
shall I look at the chat box? Okay.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yeah. So
Sir, namaste, sir.
yes, Ramu, tell
Yeah,
me.
myself Ramu from Andhra Pradesh.
Mhm.
So you have made a slide from the participants' point. You mentioned 2 points, and I'm what to say. I'm highly satisfied, and I learned many things from your session. The first,
Yeah, thank you, Ramu.
point, what you have mentioned in the slide is from my side, sir. You covered all the 3 things what I asked. The effective way of doing research and approaching supervisor, as well as doing publications in effective way. Thank you so much for your valuable time, and I also thank all the organizing committee for this great session, sir.
Sir, good evening, sir.
So, Ramu, I heard you well, and I'm very glad that you have benefited from some aspect of this lecture. But in case if you need any other inputs, you please feel free to contact me, okay, offline through email or other, okay. So, I did not get the last question that you have asked. If you have a last question, I guess just got a call. So, can you just ask me that one once again?
And no, sir, I wanted to thank you, and I thank you.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
You mentioned even about the publications also, maybe drafting papers and all that. That would be another dedicated session. Maybe if you are the organizers we are interested to plan such kind
Yeah.
of programs, we are so fortunate to join, learn, and do our things in a better way, sir. I thank each one of you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ramu. And if Professor Ravindranathan allows me to do one such lecture for a expose on research paper writing, I'll
Definitely. It is on annual, sir. The next one will be publication part, and last one will be on patenting. Then we have 2 more up to the 3 lectures series handled by yourself. We have specific faculty identified for the last
Okay, very
2.
good. Yeah,
One
thank you,
will be
sir.
handled by a person who has practical knowledge in patenting and other things, IPR activities. And another one on writing journal papers, etc. How to go about. Thank you very much.
Just
Very wonderful.
just one quick point. There was one Abhinav Kumar Srivastava who asked a question about how can we find industry relevant problems. So he was industry relevant problems can be obtained by looking at the journals which are industry oriented. For example, IEEE transactions on industrial informatics. It's a very popular journal among the industry people. So you will find all problems papers are industry relevant. In IEEE, Industrial Application Society, there is a society called IAS, which is dealing with industry related problems. So you will find all the magazines, conferences, journals of that society very much relevant for industry problems. And third way to do that is to identify industry relevant problems is actually looking at industry market surveys and other documents, like as I mentioned earlier, Gartner's technology roadmap or technology predictions. So you will get a industry oriented problems. Okay. So any other questions?
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, myself Chitralingam, sir, Dr. P. Chitralingam. Yeah, sir, from next sessions onwards, so can you please give some guidelines on PDF, sir, regarding to postdoctoral? Just,
Okay. So actually, in the next two tracks also will be focusing on the research related aspect, but we can definitely take up a separate session on postdoctoral research. In fact, particularly not about choosing a guide there, what are the opportunities existing for postdoctoral scholars in India as well as abroad? So that is a very, very interesting topic, particularly because India is now producing more PhDs than before. So we can think about introducing a separate discussion on that.
thank you, sir. Thank you very
Definitely,
much,
sir.
sir.
That will be all right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, that on Abhinav Kumar Srivastava, he is asking, sir, please show the literature survey part slide once again.
Yes. I'll share my screen once again. There were 2-3 slides, so you can tell me which slide you want to actually show. This is one thing about the reading aspect of literature survey, how to read papers very quickly and then to details. This is one slide. Then I also have looked at shown this particular papers on how to get the papers from IEEE, ACM and so on, and identify them, classify them, and identify the pros and cons of each paper. That way you will get a literature review which will give you your research direction. That is another slide that I have shown. Then I have shown this particular slide on partly on literature survey, but not entirely on that. Which slide you want to see?
Sir,
Abhinav
second one.
Kumar.
Slide?
Sir, he says second one.
Second means number. This is the second slide, but that's not a research slide. Okay, maybe you just tell me where to stop, okay, so that I can stop.
Mr.
Sir, he
Abhinav
says
Kumar,
he
can you
got it.
please?
Sir, he says he
Yeah.
got it.
Okay. Okay, fine. Thank you.
Any more questions?
If there are no more questions, we can ask Niveda or the person who is ready to offer a very grand vote of thanks to the speaker. This is just a series from Professor Manoj.
Okay, sir.
We'll have two more sessions before December. That's our plan. God willing, we'll make it very useful and informative. Subesh,
Yeah,
can
sir.
you
Actually,
invite
there is.
yeah.
Sir, actually, there is an unanswered question from one Mr.
Yeah.
Jerin Saji. He was asking, sir, how
Yeah.
we can approach a gate once we find the best for you. So, how to approach the gate once we have selected one person like that?
Okay. No, very, very easy. If you have physically, if you have reached the department physically, walk up to his office and ask. If you are not able to reach him, you email them. Email them saying that I have interest in doing PhD. I'm looking forward to working with one of the faculty in the department. I would like to meet you. Okay, and you can set a CV if required. So you can, that's what email, or basically walking into the office and requesting, or get an request for an appointment and do. Every guide will help. A good guide will help incoming students or will show very much interest in incoming students. Okay, so that way you don't have to be afraid when approaching a potential guide. Okay, and remember, if a guide is not giving you appointment even after several of your attempts, then that itself is a good indication. of your right or wrong choice. So you can decide on appropriately. So my experience is that most of the excellent gates will show interest in students, will appreciate students contacting them, so they will be able to give you appointment. If somebody is not giving appointments, he is either unavailable or not a good gate.
Thank you, sir. That was really an informative session. Thanks a lot for your time and effort. Thank you for being with us amid your busy schedule. In recognition of your effort and presence, we would like to provide you with a virtual memento. Please accept it, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I accept it. I'm not able to see the visual of the memento, but I virtually accept.
Yeah, Eldo, please.
Usually it will be shown on the screen.
Yeah, definitely it has to. Yeah, it's coming, sir.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, nice. It's a very nice
Thank
memento.
you.
Thank you.
Sorry for the delay, sir.
It's okay.
No, absolutely not a problem.
It takes time to do research as well as to ask questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Manoj, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
Manoj.
Thank you, Doctor.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, may I request you to have your email, sir?
Yes,
Manoj,
I'll
sir.
post it in the.
Okay.
Yeah, you can contact me for any questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank
through
you.
email. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. Thank you very much.
See you in the next slide.
Now I request everyone to turn on your cameras, please.
Yes, everyone, please turn on your cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are going to take a virtual photograph in 1, 2, 3 HP.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now to deliver the vote of thanks, I invite Dr. Sai Kumar Tara, IEEE Senior Member and Secretary of IEEE EdSoc Hyderabad Chapter. Sir, please.
Thank you so much, Shama. It was a wonderful talk by Dr. B.S. Manoj, sir, Chair IEEE EMB Society, Kerala Section, and Professor at Department of Avionics, IISc, Trivandrum. Really, sir, Manoj, sir, you have enlightened us with the research topic. It was a wonderful talk. On behalf of IEEE Kerala Section and the IEEE Hyderabad Section, I propose a vote of thanks. And my special thanks to Varughese CM Chair, IEEE Education Society, Kerala Section, and Dr. K.C. Ravindranath Sir, Research Activity Chair, IEEE EdSoc, Kerala Section, and Dr. Y. Vijayalatha, Chair, IEEE Education Society, Hyderabad Section, and past Chair, Dr. Shiv Sharma, and other EXICOM members of Hyderabad Section as well as Kerala Section. And also, last but not the least, the participants for making this event a great success. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to collaborate with Kerala Section. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sai Kumar,
Thank
sir,
you.
for the note. With that, we are wrapping this session. The feedback for this session is provided in the chat box. Please do fill it out. Thank you all for attending and have a great evening. We will be back with the next session in the series soon. So till then, bye.